They have warned us every single month. Over the past year or so, if you just listen to the government agencies out there telling us of what's about to come, they have told us very clearly, and they continue to tell us very clearly, that there will be a hacking attack on critical infrastructure, that critical infrastructure inside the United States is not only vulnerable, but is currently being attacked. This is big, friends. I know there's a lot of people out there saying, well, they keep warning us, so it must not be a problem. They're telling us because either A, they really think that this is a critical thing and they're covering their own butts, or two, they are preparing us. They are shaping the narrative for when this inevitably happens, whether it's by their friends over at another agency or whether it's actually an attack from the outside. We need to talk about this. Let's jump into it. Welcome to the Poplar Report. I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant by trade, and we dive deep into topics that the mainstream media just doesn't really care about so much. I'm concerned in this episode mostly with the connection. There's lots of these different reports, and you can just go out there, just Google critical infrastructure, China, hacking, and see it for yourself. We're getting warned again and again and again and again and again. We have federal agencies lining up. We have different countries lining up to warn everybody, hey, critical infrastructure, China, and then sometimes they say Russians. But hacking attacks on critical infrastructure inside the United States and our allies is a top priority, is a top concern. Let's walk through these, shall we? Just the past few months to give you a little bit of a taste of what has been coming across the wires. June, and a hat tip off to Gringo Swag at Reddit for coming up with the title here. They have warned us every month, and just kind of the walkthrough, the eye-opening walkthrough of what this looks like. June. We're in June still, so we could still get a couple more of these, but the Department of Homeland Security has come out with its top priorities for the next 2 years regarding protecting critical infrastructure. Take a guess. AI and China. And guess who's trying to get AI more than anyone else? China. So we repeat ourselves, don't we? China is trying to get ahead on AI in all forms. And I don't know why we're not talking about quantum computers, because we should definitely be talking about that too, because quantum computers, which are in existence and are scaling up rapidly, can break through algorithms like that, which is one of the reasons why I'm not a big Bitcoin fan. Now, I've been told that Bitcoin is secure enough that even quantum computers won't be able to crack it for a while, but still. Anyway, so that's June. So we got Department of Homeland Security coming out here and telling us. Okay, well, what about May? I said every month, right? Let's keep that literal to every calendar month. CISA, which I had to Google because what's CISA? It's just another government agency with lots of machine guns and body armor and everything like that. Cybersecurity, infrastructure, cybersecurity, infrastructure, and something. But that's the gist of it. Cybersecurity and infrastructure. So that's like their job is exclusively this. And they said that pro-Russia forces have broken into critical infrastructure inside the United States and Europe. Now that's kind of interesting. We're hearing, the Russians are doing it too. But notice it doesn't say Russian. It says pro-Russia. So I don't know if that's code for China or a bunch of hackers in Russia, some people doing it for funsies, doing it as a business endeavor, non-state actors. That's what you'd call non-state actors. And the fact that non-state actors are hacking into critical infrastructure inside the United States and Europe is concerning. Now, also the National Cyber Director, which we apparently have one of them too. It's amazing how many different people get paid by the federal government to do press releases. Anyway, National Cyber Director came out in May and said, China. You know, they sound very much like Donald Trump. Anyway, in April, the FBI Director Wray called China's threats broad and unrelenting threats to our critical infrastructure. So, you know, if the FBI director says it, it must be true. I mean, they are there to serve and protect us, right? And we're going to see him pop up every couple months here because he likes talking about China. He likes talking about China. He likes talking about Trump. He talks about him like circumventally. He talks about domestic terrorists inside the United States, where he's really just talking about citizens. Can't have them walking around doing their own thing. Anyway, March, FBI Director Wray at a security conference in Munich, he decided to tell them about the cyber threat from China is massive, he said. Massive. All right. Now, I don't know if he should just delegate this to the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, but, you know, FBI, they gotta, you know, be seen to wave the flag a little bit too. February, NSA and partners issued a press release. Like I said, it's amazing how many agencies and people have to be working in the government just to do all these press releases. Their press release was focused in on China, targeting the United States critical infrastructure. So we got CISA, we got FBI, we got NSA, we got their partners, whoever they are. All right, so we got all these agencies on us. But is it a priority because you're not concerned about it, or is it a priority because you are concerned about it? And there's a lot of people out there that will say that hacking attacks on critical infrastructure just can't really get anywhere. They can't really get into power plants. They can't really get into pipelines. Of course, we saw that happen, though, right? Didn't we? They say they can't really get into the power grid. They can't really get into this and that. It's like, but we have like whole agencies of our government protecting critical infrastructure from hacking attacks. So if they can't do it, then why do we have these agencies? Now, you could say that maybe they're just trying to pad their budgets and cover their tails, but a lot of this rings of truth, especially when they keep saying they succeeded over here, they succeeded over there. Just like they did in May, they were talking about how U.S. and European critical infrastructure sites were compromised, water treatment plants, other things like that. Big news. All right, January, FBI Director Wray out there again, talking about Chinese hackers purposing to wreck and have turmoil on U.S. critical infrastructure. This was a testimony before the House. Also, we had CISA. They came out there and talked about China and critical infrastructure and, you know, hacking and stuff. December, there was the targeting of the Texas power grid and Hawaii water agencies. Also, West Coast port came under attack, as well as a pipeline in the U.S. You know, just because it's not a thing. And what I want us to take away from this, all right? I know some of you guys are not on board. You're like, Steve, I get that prices are going up. I get that. But, you know, nothing's really going to happen. And that's what people say until something happens, right? Now, I get that doesn't prove that something will happen, except the fact that if something's possible, it will happen. And especially when you have lots of people who are dedicated to making something happen, the defense has to be right every single time. And the simple fact is that we have so many different power plants, so many different power distribution centers, so many different networks that control pipelines, that control water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants. We got natural gas pipelines. We got natural gas facilities. We got nuclear facilities. We got so many different facilities that like have so many different networks, and we only have to make one mistake. They only have to make one mistake once. And we have lots and lots of dedicated people who would like to see nothing more than the United States' ruin. And remember all the steady flow of people, the millions and millions of people coming into the United States that we don't know who they are. So we have lots and lots of people overseas who get tens of thousands of people together and chant "Death to America." And they're coming over here. And I know that it's wishful thinking. I know we're hoping that they get here to the United States and they're like, hey, this is really nice. I like this place. But we know that's not exactly how particularly one people group out there, like Muslims, tend to react. Now, I'm kind of focusing in here on certain sects of Islam. Of course, Iranian Muslims and some other areas like Saudi Arabia and some others, where they get to Dearborn, Michigan, and they decide to huddle up together and get all radicalized. Now, that's not to say that the majority or even a small minority of the Muslim population are radicalized, but here's the thing. It only takes a few. Just sprinkle in a few. How many to cause 9/11? How many to cause the terror attacks in Paris back in the day? How many to just go off their rocker and decide that they want to cause mass casualties here in the U.S.? Or, in some ways, worse, if they take a logical, methodical attack on critical infrastructure inside the United States. Whether that's physical attacks or whether that is a physical hacking attack. If they can breach certain security systems, if they can breach certain agencies and get physical access to certain computers, they can do a lot of damage if they have any idea what they're doing. And that's not to say that physical attacks aren't effective. We've seen what happens when certain kinds of transformers get physically attacked, which is pretty darn easy to do. And we've seen that. We've seen dry runs on our physical critical infrastructure. So what do we need to get prepared for? What happens, friend, when the lights go out? How are you stacked up if it might be weeks or months without power? Would you survive? How? Would you have enough food? Would you have enough fuel? Would you be able to adapt to a new lifestyle that doesn't require the things that you can no longer get access to? Because that's the question that we need to face now while the grid is up. Canadian Prepper often has said in the past that what you can do with the grid up, 1 hour of work with the grid up is like 100 hours with the grid down. If you think about that, long and hard, it is so absolutely true. You can go right now and go pump some gas. You can trade 1 hour worth of your wages and acquire something that it would take you at least 100 hours to build. And isn't that true? How much food can you purchase for 1 hour's wage? You can actually produce quite a bit of food by going to work, then going to the store and driving home. This is what we need to be thinking about. When the lights go out, when? When? Not if, when. All systems break eventually. The idea that systems will be perfect forever is kind of laughable. The simple fact is that when we look at these power lines that are standing up on top of these hillsides, the towers and the cables themselves, though they get inspected and everything like that, they weren't supposed to last this long. And yet they're still up there. And more importantly, there's no plan to replace them. If they start failing en masse, there isn't enough cable in the U.S. to replace them. If those towers start failing, we can't put them up fast enough. We don't have the workers. We don't have the steel. We don't have the equipment to rapidly replace many of these. I mean, sure, we can plan in 5 years to replace certain lines. Sure, we can budget for it and we can prepare for it. But the idea of replacing large swaths of the United States' power grid over the next 10 years, we're not prepared for that. We're not. And then we got a bunch of people wanting to go plug these massive battery packs and massive fire hazards in to absorb all this electricity that doesn't exist yet. We need to build power plants, but we're not building power plants either. We can't build anything in the United States very quickly anymore. The regulation, the bureaucracy inside the United States make it impossible. We're being warned again and again and again by bureaucrats who are covering their butts, I believe, because they see real problems. They're seeing the attacks come through on us. And they're asking themselves the question, how long before one of these comes through and hits something really critical? We've seen a few come through and hit some things pretty critical. But what happens when they get a coordinated attack to hit multiple critical things all at once? And that's what we're being told China is doing. They're not attacking our infrastructure. They're burrowing into our infrastructure. And they're playing whack-a-mole, but they don't know how deep these Chinese organizations have gotten into our networks. Until one day, the Chinese decide to flip the switch. I know a country could come and EMP the United States. But I'm much more concerned about the Chinese just simply flipping the switch and turning us back into the Stone Age. And believe me, that's what I think they'd like to do more than nothing else. They want to go move towards Taiwan. The United States says, we're going to deploy our military, and China goes, flip. And what happens then? What happens to our military when there's no infrastructure, when there's no population or economy behind it anymore? How quickly will that fall apart? Pretty quickly. Pretty quickly. They're going to want to get in their boats and come back home because they're going to hear the horrific things happening here. And friends, we need to be getting prepared for that. World War III, everyone's like, I'm concerned about World War III, but are you really concerned about World War III? Do you really understand what will happen in World War III? Because if you think the power and the internet and the food supply systems are going to be up and running when there's World War III, I don't know. I'd like to live in your rose-colored glasses land because all those things broke down during World War II and World War I. The internet didn't exist back then, but if you look at kind of the equivalents, those things broke down. I mean, you couldn't mail stuff during World War II or World War III unless you were going through the military channels. All the other mail broke down. The other systems broke down. Especially when you look at the countries that were on the losing end of those wars. Their systems broke down horrifically. And I believe we may just be on the losing side of this one. All right, friends, let's heed the warnings that we're getting. We're getting them every single month. We're getting them every couple weeks. Let's listen to them and take them seriously and get prepared. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.